Hello and welcome back to the Encryption Edge, the podcast that deciphers the latest shifts in the industry. I'm your host, Wyatt Hackathorn, and today we're cutting straight to the chase on the monumental shift in web server certificate policies, spearheaded by usual Google. And this isn't just an update, this is a fundamental reconstruction of how trust is managed in the public key infrastructure, and how it's going to profoundly affect how enterprises, particularly those with complex digital ecosystems, operate. The PKI domain has been incredibly dynamic this year, forcing organizations to reconsider everything from certificate lifecycles to their underlying managing processes. Google's last move, however, represented a definitive hardening of certificate usage policies and demanding a greater precision and accountability for companies. For years, the industry adopted sort of a pragmatic, mostly lenient approach to extended key usage, or EKU, the values on X509 certificates. Specifically, public web certificates, primarily designed for TLS server authentication, proving a domain's identity to a browser, were often more convenience leveraged for other functions. Think of client authentication for internal systems or even code signing in some maybe less than ideal scenarios. This multi-purpose use was a shortcut, certainly, but it introduced unnecessary privilege and sort of an attack surface. That pragmatic leniency is kind of over. Google has set a firm deadline for June 15th, 2026. And from that point forward, certificates included in the Chrome root store will be strictly enforced for their intended purpose. The upshot is clear. A web server certificate is for TLS server authentication and really nothing else. If you've been using that certificate for client authentication, for your VPN, for instance, or for secure communication between internal microservices, the practice is now on borrowed time at this point. This isn't a suggestion, it's kind of a non-negotiable requirement for certificates to remain trusted by the Chrome browser, which, let's face it, is the kind of the de facto standard. This policy enforcement is directly linked to another significant development we discussed previously. The drastic reduction in public certificate lifespans. As of April this year, the CA Browser Forum officially mandated that publicly trusted TLS certificates can now have a maximum lifespan of just 47 days. This means that your public-facing or any public-facing certificates, which you might have been renewing annually, now require a renewal approximately 6 to 7 weeks. So we have a dual impact, a dramatically shortened lifespan that depends on aggressive automation, and now Google's strict enforcement of certificate purpose that necessitates a complete reevaluation of your certificate development architecture. Now, what would be the impact of this move for organizations? For any enterprises, especially those in any highly regulated sectors like finance services or healthcare, this is sort of a critical point for your organization. Any non-compliant certificates will be flagged, leading to significant outages for legitimate applications. So this isn't theoretical downtime. This is actually a real-world business disruption that can and will happen. Imagine your enterprise applications relying on a TLS server authentication certificate for client authentication, only for Chrome to suddenly distrust that specific EKU use. The only viable path forward is to identify those multi-purpose certificates and provision dedicated purpose-built certificates for each function. So you have sort of a separation between your client and server authentication certificates. This is inevitably going to be the drive for greater adoption and sophistication for internal PKI developments, giving organizations sort of a fine-grained control over certificate issuance and the EKU management for non-public facing use cases. For architects and engineers, this is a strong reinforcement of the principle of least privilege applied to cryptography. This move kind of highlights the need for only using certificates for their specific intended purpose. And this aligns perfectly with modern zero trust frameworks, where every interaction, every authentication is evaluated and minimal necessity privilege is used. Moreover, the combination of the 47-day lifespans and then the strict EKU enforcement kind of creates this undeniable imperative for automation and crypto agility within your organization. Any manual certificate management processes, whether they involve things like spreadsheets or ticketing systems or bespoke scripts, honestly you can't keep these in place. With all these changes, it's going to make it way more difficult to actually track and manage those certificates, and automation is going to be kind of the only way to move forward. So organizations kind of must rapidly mature their certificate lifecycle management strategies, implementing those automation pieces that I talked about, automation solutions for both discovery, issuance, renewal, and revocation. This is sort of a shift from manual to automated processes, no longer a best practice. It's a foundational requirement at this point for operational resilience, excuse me, and security in this new certificate life cycles. And to kind of further illustrate Google's unwavering commitment for certificate trust moving forward, consider their track record in the past. Their record of distrust actions against CA authorities themselves, or CAs, excuse me. This isn't just about setting new rules. This is about actively purging non-compliant certificates and CAs from the Chrome root store. We saw this with Entrust SSL certificates, where new certificates from certain Entrust roots face distrust in Chrome. The reasoning was kind of clear. There was a pattern of compliance failures, including delayed revocations and a consistent inability to meet auditing commitments. This demonstrated Google's willingness to use its market power to kind of enforce these directly at the CA level. And the trend continues. More recently, Google announced that Chrome will no longer trust TLS server authentication certificates issued by Chunghwa Telecom Public CA and NetLock from approximately August 1st, 2025, impacting Chrome version 139. Again, the core justification revolved around patterns of concerning behavior, including poor incident response, inadequate certificate lifecycle processes, and the failure to adhere to baseline requirements established by the CA browser forum. These actions against CA trusts or CAs like Entrust, Chunghwa Telecom, and NetLock send a unequivocal message that accountability is non-negotiable at this point. CAs are the bedrock of digital trust, and Google is applying rigorous scrutiny and rules against those. For enterprises, this highlights the critical need for CA agility and crypto agility. Relying solely on a single CA without a contingency plan for the potential distrust event is a significant operational risk. You need the capability to pivot, basically, to issue certificates from alternative trusted CAs if your primary provider experiences issues or faces any distrust. So for our audience, what are the concrete, actionable steps you need to take right now? The clock is ticking, particularly with the 2026 deadline for certificate purpose enforcement, and then the 47-day lifespans are already a reality for public certs. Okay, so here is your immediate imperatives, things that you can basically walk away from this podcast and make these changes now. So one is sort of a deep dive certificate inventory and EKU mapping. Go beyond the basic inventory. You need to get a comprehensive automated discovery for every X509 certificate across your environment. Crucially, identify their extended key usage or their EKU values and map them to their actual operational functions. So then you need to pinpoint every instance where the public TLS certificate or server authentication certificate is being used for, say, things like client authentication or code signing. Then the second thing is to create architectural separation for EKU compliance. For every non-compliant EKU usage you identify, architect a solution to provide a dedicated purpose-specific certificate. This often means designing or expanding an internal PKI to issue certificates for internal client authentication, device authentication, code signing, or non-public TLS certificate functions. This allows you to define custom policies and pretty much maintain full control over your certificate lifecycles. The next thing is to implement robust certificate lifecycle management automation. I talked a little bit about before, but automation is kind of the way to move forward. Although there are these, rules coming out and making it seem like this is like an unmanageable task, it's going to be a lot easier if you adopt things like automation and a certificate lifecycle management solution. The 47-day public certificate lifespan mandates a full automation, like I said, and invest in and deploy a mature CLM platform that automates certificate discovery, any requests, issuance, things like renewal or revocation, and deployment across diverse environments, things like your web servers, your load balancers, your databases, containers, or use of APIs. Manual processes in certificate lifecycle management leads to catastrophic outages. This is your primary enabler for true crypto agility. The next thing is to develop CA agility. We talked a little bit about it, and to develop also a multi-CA strategy. Assess your reliance on single certificate authorities. Develop processes and, where feasible, implement tools that enable you to onboard and rapidly switch between multiple trusted CAs. And this will fully mitigate the risk of a primary CA facing distrust and ensures business continuity so that when, let's say, Google distrusts the CA that you're using, you're not scrambling to transfer from one to the next. And the last thing is to educate and to upskill your teams. So the traditional approach to certificate management is obsolete, and the operations, security, and development teams need to understand these new requirements for everybody to kind of work cohesively. The principles of least privileges for certificates and how to effectively leverage automated CLM tools. This is more than just a compliance exercise. It's about building sort of a fundamental and more secure, resilient, and agile digital infrastructure. Google's decisive actions combined with the industry's wide move to shorter lifespans are accelerating the inevitable shift towards fully automated, purpose-driven, and cryptally agile PKI. Don't let your organization be caught unprepared. If you prepare now, it's going to be a lot less of a headache, and it's going to actually allow you to, achieve ROI with something like a certificate lifecycle management solution. So you're not paying either fines for non-compliance or paying in downtime or loss of trust from customers when you have these outages. And that kind of wraps it up for the deep dive into Google certificate overhaul for this episode of Encryption Edge. Our industry is changing at an unprecedented rate at this point, and understanding these shifts is critical for every tech professional. By embracing these changes and prioritizing intelligent automation, you'll be well positioned for the future. Thank you guys for tuning in. I would love to hear of any topic suggestions that you would like me to talk about. Give me a comment if you're over there on YouTube, or you can email at us at info@encryptionconsulting.com. We'll be back with some more insights to help you manage the complexities of the digital security. Until next time, stay secure.